Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry. Hello, and welcome to this open book episode of All Things Book Marketing. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and today we have our book publicist from the business team, Chris Baker, joining us. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on. We were talking earlier about how I think the last time you and I had chatted was to teach me about how to use quoted. And now here we are talking about quoted and commentary all over again.
Yeah, full circle.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you came to Smith.
Sure. Yeah. So I started in English as my major in college, and I worked in publishing back in 2018. I worked for a hybrid publisher here in Northern Virginia, where I'm based, called Mascot Books. So I sort of cut my teeth in the book marketing publishing space, working for them for a few years. It was pretty similar to what I was doing here at Smith, a little bit more marketing as opposed to publicity. So this was pre-COVID, of course, so it was a lot more, working with authors to book signing events at the bookstores and things like that, doing Amazon ads, but also a fair amount of media outreach as well. So I definitely enjoyed my time there. Got to work with a wide variety of authors, from the children's books to personal finance, memoirs, pretty much the gamut of genres and things like that. But I've kind of narrowed my perspective now with working here at Smith, and I'm really happy to be working in the business space, and I love the team here, so I'm really happy to be here at Smith.
One of my first internships right out of college in 2017 was in a publicity team for a small indie publisher in Dallas. And we also did a lot of those book tours. I remember there was a children's book I was working on that was about endangered species and zoo animals type of thing. So we did like a zoo tour. He was going to zoos and doing like an animal scavenger hunt with signed copies of the book. And it was like something so wild and wacky and like out of the box that we wouldn't necessarily do now in 2023 following COVID.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, growing up, my memories of children's books where it's all, the hungry caterpillar, and, it was kind of just like very straightforward. It's an animal. He's got a very simple goal. But now the children's books are tackling these very sort of adult themes, and there's all these interesting layers to it. So I think it's interesting that even though it is like a genre that's appealing to younger generations, it can still kind of have these broader implications and touch on like things like climate change and stuff like that. So it's cool that it's, not just, children's topics.
Well, and you're a new father too, so I'm sure you're really drowning in children's books right now at home.
That's true. Yes. I mean, yeah, we definitely are reading here some of our favorites, but yeah, there's plenty to choose from. So always looking for some good new kids books for sure.
Well, in that case, one of my favorites is Escargot. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a French snail who's on a quest to find the perfect salad with a light vinaigrette and a few croutons. And it's incredible. It's amazing. I buy it for all my nieces and nephews, along with a little snail hat so they can match. And it's one to check out. Completely off topic from this original interview, but
that's good.
Escargot, a beautiful book.
All right.
So more on topic, you are one of our wizards of getting expert commentary for clients, especially for business authors. So tell us a little bit more about what expert commentary is and how we use it to help our authors.
For sure. Yeah. So expert commentary is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. We're positioning the author as an expert in, whatever field it is that they find themselves an expert in, whether that's, AI, climate change, pretty much anything that you could be an expert in. There's reporters looking for experts to flesh out their stories. And so, they're looking for quick little blurbs that they can insert into their story, and then, hopefully get some good links for the author to put back on their website and things like that. So I think there's a few different ways that authors can leverage these types of opportunities. Number one, it helps to establish credibility for yourself as an expert in said field. It also helps to build a reputation with the reporter. So let's say, for instance, they end up not using your commentary, they might still come back to you for future stories as long as you can, provide them some good comments in a timely manner. So it definitely doesn't hurt to take up as many of those opportunities as you can, even if it takes a little bit of back and forth to get those runs. It's also a good way to plug the book, of course. In an ideal world, we'd get a good mention of the book and a hyperlink back to Amazon. It doesn't always happen, but it sometimes is the case where they can at least just get their name into the article, link to their website, things like that. So all those things are useful for the author to get SEO for their website, to the book listing. Another thing that's worth noting is, as you know, it's a little bit more difficult to get sort of the traditional book review type of feature story on a book, especially in some of the bigger name outlets. So I think expert commentary is a good way to kind of bridge the gap and get into some of these bigger names, even if it's just a quick, couple of sentences. That can still be, leveraged by putting it on your website, featured in, New York Times, Forbes, you name it. Lastly, I think due to the timely nature of it, you can get the link to the story fairly quickly, whereas a full book review, obviously, an ideal where they have to read the book and then put the review up. So that can take months and months. People are always asking, how do I get reviewed in, New York Times, et cetera. And they want the book so far in advance. But if they're on a deadline, hey, I need, 2 sentences from this person. The story needs to go live tomorrow. You can get that link right away, put it on your website. It's a great time. So expert commentary is great. I think all the authors that we work with should be ready to, provide their opinions and get some good coverage for themselves.
Kind of a quick turnaround on both fronts then, because I know it's happened several times, at least for some of my authors, that I'm reaching out at 5:30 p.m. and I'm like, hey, do you have some time in the next couple hours? Because I have this deadline by 8 p.m. They just sent out a request. They're looking for commentary you're perfect for. If you can get it to me in the next hour, I can submit it and hopefully they'll get something out. And so it is a lot of pressure, quick turnaround for the author, but it's also quick turnaround for the journalist. So it's kind of it gives back in that way. It's
For sure.
balanced.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, time is kind of your biggest enemy, but if you have the time, even to just put a little quick something together, I think it helps, again, because the reporter can say, hey, okay, even if I can't use this or you missed the deadline, they'll be like, all right, I'll, loop back to this person in the future. So it doesn't hurt to put it together. And also I'll say, oftentimes what we'll do is, if we miss the deadline or the, commentary doesn't get used, we can always repurpose the content into a pitch, into an article, something like that. So it won't go to waste.
That's true. I think it's also good to have some commentary just kind of written in advance on topics that you're most likely to talk about. And I know that one's kind of hard because you never know what journalists are going to be looking for randomly, but I have heard of, especially you all on the business team and on the lifestyle team, doing a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially if there's a timely hook to your book already, you should enter into your publicity campaign sort of thinking about what you want to be discussing in the news, monitoring for, stories that you want to comment on, and engaging with the reporters that are in your field so that, you can reach out to them directly, message them on Twitter, things like that. It's really important.
And what makes an ideal comment? What's going to get you more likely to be picked up for the story?
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on it a little bit already. Obviously, the timeliness is going to be key. Making sure you meet the deadlines. Sometimes it's not possible, but I definitely have had instances where I've turned it in past the requested deadline and it still kind of makes the cut. I think a lot of times they can still go in and edit the stories afterwards, especially if it's like a really good quote. So yeah, definitely being prompt in that is important, but it's not necessarily the end all be all. Definitely, try to be as thorough as you can in your answers. Sometimes it's just a couple of questions. Sometimes they've got a whole list. So, answer as much as you can. Don't, go outside of your comfort zone and try to ask Chat GPT to do it for you. At the same time, also bear in mind, they're most likely going to trim your answers down a little bit so you can be pretty concise, because they're only going to pick the, a few bits of what you say anyways. So no reason to write an entire article. That is a topic for another day.
Kind of like writing the thesis paragraph of an article, future article.
Yeah, I like to tell people it's, bullet points are usually a good way to go. Just a quick few blurbs that they can scan and, take what they need. No reason to fluff it out with, excess language that's probably going to get edited out anyways.
And then, like you said, we can reuse those bullet points for pitching and
Exactly.
for article ideas, byline article topics, so on and so forth. 3
to 5 bullet points will be, way more beneficial than a 3 to 5 page essay, in my opinion.
And I feel like we're always talking about this. I know I've mentioned it several times interviewing other Smith employees, but it's like 3, 5, or 7. They only want
Yeah,
those
the
odd
odd
numbers.
numbers, the prime numbers. We like
Yeah.
to deal in primes.
Yeah. Don't send 4 because it's bad
No, yeah.
energy. I
We'll
don't
change our
know.
name to Prime Publicity, I think.
That's an idea. I'll go grab Sandy real quick. We'll bring her
Yeah.
in. And then you did kind of talk about it a little bit, but ways for authors to leverage that published commentary. So you said putting it on their website, promoting it in kind of their recently seen as, but they can use that other places too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think website is the big one. Make sure you've got like a media page on your website, pull the logos for the outlets that you're in, because that's really eye-catching, and make sure you hyperlink to the stories. Yeah, one thing I was thinking too, obviously, sharing it on social media is very important. Making sure you tag the outlet and the reporter to encourage them to, reshare it.
Both.
Something else too, we mentioned that sometimes your commentary doesn't get included, or maybe they only take a couple of the bullet points when you provided like several. So in your social posts, that might be a good opportunity to sort of flesh out all of the thoughts that you had that might not have made it into the piece, make it a little bit more self-promotional, tied into the book in case it wasn't included in the article. So yeah, it's just a way to kind of like expand on what was included in the piece, but still give you the credibility of, hey, I was in the New Yorker or whatever, but here's everything I wanted to say that they didn't necessarily include.
I love that, like an expanded and revised edition. Special edition you only
Exactly.
get by following the author.
Right. Yeah, read more and then you pop in the Amazon link.
Perfect. Ideal. And what are some resources the authors can use and that we use for expert commentary for seeing those requests?
Yep. So, there's a number of websites that we use, which I believe authors can sign up for too. I've worked with a couple that are already on that, which is good in some ways because it frees up us having to do that. But it also, I think it's something that would be worth considering for authors, maybe post publicity, that want to kind of, keep the momentum going. Things like ProfNet, Haro, Help the Reporter Out, Quoted. These are all, pretty similar services that basically aggregate a list of incoming queries from reporters that are divided by, topic. So it's, like we mentioned earlier, important as you're entering into a book launch, a publicity campaign, to sort of figure out what your niche is. What topics do you feel comfortable speaking on, even if it is not necessarily directly relevant to, your book, your business, whatever. Let's say you happen to be a, field hockey expert who has some credentials to back it up. You could potentially be an expert for some field hockey stories, even if, your business is related to supply chain or whatever. So, sometimes it's helpful to think outside the box, because people outside of your field might still potentially be interested in, learning about what you do and buying your book and things like that. But for the most part, yeah, it's probably going to be more of staying on brand and figuring out, how can I support my, book launch, my business and things like that. How can I, connect with the right reporters that are going to be, in my field. And yeah, I think engaging with them on social media, even outside of things like Quoted, is pretty much going to accomplish the same thing.
I had a tech client that wrote a piece about skateboarding, like
There
tips
you
they
go.
learned from skateboarding for tech world, tech business. So, I mean, there are opportunities to mix and match your interests, your hobbies.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you work with the same client I'm thinking of, who is sort of a tech background, worked in IBM, but is also a cattle rancher on the side. So it's like,
Yeah.
oftentimes there's things that are, you wouldn't think are related, but it's like, well, if you have both of these worlds, who's to say there aren't other people that have this crossover? People are not, one-sided. Everyone has multiple interests. So I think, if you could be an expert in multiple things, why not, cast a wide net?
And speaking of multiple interests and multiple things, you have a band, right? And you started out in the music
Yes,
industry.
that is true. Yeah, so before I did anything with PR and publishing, I played in this band called the Dusk Whales. We've been playing together since we were kids. Basically, we started it in early high school. And it was one of those things where, we were kind of just doing it for fun at first, but then it slowly kind of took on a life of its own. And we, were gigging almost every weekend. We were releasing lots of music, and it became basically a profitable business for us, but we didn't really have anyone to sort of run the ship. And so I kind of took on that role by default. So, I was basically the acting band manager agent. So I kind of figured out how to do publicity and marketing just by kind of doing it. And I kind of learned that there's a lot of crossover between, the work that musicians do to promote themselves and then authors. A lot of building websites, creating social media platforms, and building your brand online and engaging with your followers, and all the boring business tax stuff. I kind of just had to figure it all out. And there's a lot of interesting crossover. I figured, like, in publishing, obviously you're promoting physical goods with kind of trying to sell actual books, but at the same time there's a big market for ebooks, audiobooks. Music, obviously, you've got physical media like CD, vinyl, even tapes that are making a resurgence. But at the same time, most people are more interested in just digital streams on Spotify and things like that. So there's kind of, you've got to balance a little bit of both in both worlds. And then, obviously, book signing events versus, booking shows and things is very similar. Doing podcasts, doing sort of college radio campaigns, all these things are kind of similar. But, at the same time, I think the good thing about publishing and the music industry, even though they're both very competitive in a crowded space, they're all very supportive of each other. So
That's true.
I think that's one of the good things, that authors respect other authors, and the same for bands most of the time, not always.
True. My
Yeah.
partner is actually a musician, and I'm always helping him figure out posters and graphics for his gigs and things like that. And so he calls me his publicist too.
Nice.
So got a
put
little
that
bit
on
of
your
mix
resume.
too. Yeah.
So now
Yeah,
you're an
music
expert
publicist.
in the music industry by default. Yeah, add that to your quota.
I don't know about that. I kind of just helped him with his Instagram and a couple of like band
that
posters,
counts.
but
Yeah.
I'll take it. That's
Yeah,
fine. It
it
could be
sounds
an
like an expert
honorary
to me.
music publicist.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Where can our listeners and watchers follow to learn more about you and your band?
Yeah, we're at the Dusk Whales on social media, theduskwhales.com. We hopefully should have some new music coming out. It's been a little bit of a slow sort of post-COVID lull for the band, but we've been slowly churning away at some new material, which I hope will see the light of day eventually. But we've definitely got a good backlog of stuff if you want to check it out. And I guess you could connect with me on LinkedIn, which has nothing to do with the band, but I do exist on that platform as well.
And you can always, of course, follow Smith Publicity on LinkedIn and socials everywhere. We're now on Threads, so that's really cool. And then we have blog posts and other podcast episodes, other open book episodes. You can always follow to learn more from Smith and Chris as he contributes more content for Smith too. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And if you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.